What if everything you believed was a lie? Imagine sacrificing your dreams for someone you loved, only to find out that they betrayed you in the worst way possible. Would you seek revenge? Or would you walk away and let them win? This is the story of a woman who fought back against betrayal and took control of her own fate. Want to know how she turned her pain into power? Keep watching, because the truth will shock you. I walked into the room, my heart pounding in my chest, and there he was, Blake, standing in front of me like the same man I had once loved. But I knew better now. My fingers clenched into fists, the memories of betrayal flooding my mind. This wasn't the man I had sacrificed everything for. No, this was a stranger, a man whose lies had led to my ruin. Blake had made me a promise once, a promise that shattered my entire life. If you marry me, you'll have to give up that job, Emma, he said, his voice so convincing. Cindy needs it more than you. She's family. I believed him. For him, I gave up everything, my career, my dreams, my life. I never questioned him. How could I? He was my world. I should have known something was off, but I was so blinded by love, by hope, that I ignored the warning signs. Blake and his cousin, Cindy, they were always so close, but I never imagined what it would cost me. I worked tirelessly for years, serving his parents, caring for them while he disappeared into his military life. Years passed, and Blake came home less and less, claiming it was for work, that he couldn't be around. He promised me dignity, but all I got was a life that wasn't mine. When his parents passed, I thought I finally had the chance to confront him. I packed my things, ready to face him after all these years of waiting. I imagined that maybe, just maybe, he'd apologize, tell me everything had been worth it. But when I arrived at his base, everything I thought I knew about our life together crumbled in an instant. There in front of me were Blake and Cindy, hand in hand, walking towards their children who were nearly 30 years old. I couldn't breathe. My heart stopped, and in that moment, I understood. Blake had never loved me. Our marriage had been a farce, a cruel joke, a contract that only benefited him. He married Cindy, built a family with her, and left me in the dark. I exploded. Fury surged through me as I charged at them, my body trembling with rage. Blake pushed me to the ground, his face cold and unfeeling, as if I meant nothing. The military guards rushed in, hauling me away. But not before Blake accused me of destroying a military marriage. He claimed I was the one who forged the marriage certificate. The truth didn't matter. My words fell on deaf ears. I was left to rot. Years passed, and I became a ghost of my former self. I spent my days toiling in a prison of my own making. My body broken by hard labor, my spirit crushed by the weight of betrayal. I died there, behind bars, alone. But then, I woke up. It was 1983 again. Blake stood before me, asking me to give up my job for Cindy. His words were the same, his tone unchanged, as if nothing had ever happened. The coldness in his eyes hit me like a slap. In that moment, I knew I had been given a second chance. A chance to right the wrongs of my past life, and I wasn't going to waste it. I stared at Blake, the man who had never truly seen me. I wanted to claw his eyes out, rip away the mask of civility he wore. I had been a fool in my past life, but not anymore. I understand, I said, my voice ice cold, but you're wrong. I won't marry you. His eyes narrowed, a hint of anger flashing across his face. You're making a mistake, he warned, his voice sharp. You need to understand, Emma. This is your only chance. I stood tall, my heart racing with defiance. You and Cindy can have your life. I won't play the part you want me to anymore. He recoiled, as if he couldn't fathom why I wasn't begging for his love, for his attention. But I wasn't the same woman anymore. I wasn't the naive girl who gave up her future for a man who never cared. I turned my back on him, walking away, but I could feel his eyes on me, his frustration growing. He would come for me. I knew that. He always did. But this time, I would fight back. I had thought the worst was over, but nothing had prepared me for the cruel reality of what I had to face. Blake and Cindy's manipulation ran deeper than I could ever imagine. The whispers in the hospital grew louder. She only got the job because of her family, they said. She's using connections. The judgment, the gossip, it was suffocating. I wasn't just fighting Blake anymore. I was fighting an entire system that had been rigged against me from the start. But I wasn't about to back down. The whispers only made me stronger. I worked harder, I proved myself. My skills spoke for themselves, and I wasn't going to let anyone forget that. Cindy, always lurking in the shadows, watching for any weakness, tried to throw me off balance. She challenged me, daring me to prove myself. Her eyes gleamed with malicious intent as she tried to make me out to be the villain. "If you're so great, why don't you prove it?" she would say, her voice dripping with disdain. It was a game I was tired of playing, but I was getting smarter, playing it my way. And the director's bias was becoming more obvious every day. I didn't care. I had something to prove, not to them, but to myself. When Blake showed up at the hospital, his eyes full of false concern, I barely contained my anger. "Do you want to make things right?" he asked, his voice softer now. "Just give Cindy the job. Let her have it." I laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the empty hallway. "You don't get it, do you?" I said, my voice steady but laced with venom. "I won't give up what's mine. Not for you. Not for her." I walked away from him, my steps firm, each one a reminder that I was no longer the woman who had once worshipped him. I was stronger now, and I would not let them tear me down again. But the games weren't over. The more I stood my ground, the more the walls closed in. Blake and Cindy's schemes continued, and the rumors grew, spinning their webs of lies. The tension between us thickened. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, a familiar face appeared. Ryan. His gaze was steady, filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time: trust. He was a reminder of everything I had lost, and everything I could still have. But as I looked into his eyes, I knew this wasn't just about Blake and Cindy anymore. It was about my future. About finding my own path, independent of the chaos they had created. Ryan's presence was the anchor I needed, but Blake wasn't done yet. His obsession with me was turning into something darker, something twisted. He wouldn't let go. I had to make a choice, and the choice I made would change everything. I couldn't breathe as I stood there, watching Blake's twisted obsession unfold before my eyes. The man who had once been my entire world was now a nightmare. His presence loomed over me like a shadow, suffocating every ounce of peace I had tried to rebuild. "You think you can just walk away from me, Emma?" he hissed, his voice low, almost a growl. "You'll regret this. You will never escape me." I could feel the weight of his words, but I didn't flinch. I had learned in my past life what it meant to stay silent, to bend to his will. Not anymore. I wasn't the same woman who would meekly take whatever scraps he threw my way. His games had gone on long enough, and now it was time for him to face the consequences. Ryan stood beside me, a calm presence in a storm of chaos. His gaze was steady, and I knew he was ready to protect me, no matter what it took. But even he couldn't shield me from the war that was about to explode. Blake had crossed a line, and there was no going back. "Are you done with your little games, Blake?" I spat, my voice laced with fury. "This ends now." He seemed stunned by my confidence, his eyes narrowing as the realization hit him that I was no longer his to control. "Blake, you're pathetic," I continued, my words cutting through the air. "You never cared about me, not really. You used me, threw me away when I wasn't useful to you anymore. And now, you think you can just waltz back into my life, make demands, and pretend that everything is the same? You've got another thing coming." His face turned pale, his lips trembling with anger and frustration. "I should have known you were this ungrateful," he hissed. "You always think you're better than me, but you're nothing without me. You wouldn't have made it this far without my connections." I laughed bitterly. "You're right, Blake. I was nothing without you, but not anymore. I have Ryan. I have my career. And you?" I shook my head in disgust. "You're just a man who's too scared to face the truth." Blake's eyes flickered with something close to panic, and for the first time, I saw him falter. He took a step forward, reaching for me, but I stepped back, every inch of me screaming not to let him near. "Don't you dare," I warned, my voice cold and unforgiving. "Don't think you can intimidate me anymore. Not when I've already lost everything once." "I'm not afraid of you." The tension between us was palpable. It was like we were both playing a game of chicken, but I wasn't about to back down. Blake, however, had underestimated me. He didn't know the strength I had gained from years of suffering, from every moment I had spent rebuilding myself from the ground up. I wasn't the same woman who had begged for his love, for his attention. I was stronger than that. "You've got no idea how far I'm willing to go," Blake snarled, his fists clenching at his sides. I smiled darkly. "Oh, I think I do." The confrontation was over in an instant. Blake stumbled backward, his expression twisted in disbelief. He couldn't comprehend the transformation I had undergone, and it enraged him. For the first time, he saw me as an equal, and it terrified him. I turned my back on him, refusing to let him see the satisfaction in my eyes. I wasn't going to let him win. Not now, not ever. The aftermath of that confrontation was exactly what I expected: chaos. Blake was furious, and Cindy, as always, was right behind him, trying to manipulate the situation to her advantage. The whispers at the hospital grew louder, and the pressure from the director intensified. It was clear they were trying to push me out, to make me the villain in their little drama. But I wasn't backing down. I worked harder, kept my head down, and focused on what mattered: my patients, my career. Every day, I proved myself, showing them that I wasn't just some charity case. I was a doctor, and I would be damned if I let anyone take that away from me. One day, after a particularly grueling shift, I found myself face to face with Cindy. She was standing outside the break room, her expression smug as always. "You really think you're above everyone else, don't you?" she sneered, her voice dripping with venom. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words, but I refused to let them get to me. "You think your lies and manipulation will get you anywhere, Cindy?" I asked, my voice steady. "You're a joke. You've always been one." Her eyes flashed with anger, but I could see the cracks in her facade. She wasn't as invincible as she liked to think she was. "You'll regret crossing me," she threatened, but I just smirked. "Do your worst," I replied, turning away. The final straw came when Blake tried to turn everything around on me, blaming me for his own actions. He showed up at the hospital one afternoon, his face pale and filled with urgency. "I need to talk to you," he demanded. I didn't want to hear it. I had nothing left to say to him. But the moment he mentioned Ryan, my heart skipped a beat. "What did you do to him?" I asked, my voice shaking with fear. Blake's smug smile made me sick. "He's not as invincible as you think," Blake sneered. "He's already on the verge of death, and there's nothing you can do about it." The ground beneath me seemed to disappear. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Ryan, the man who had stood by me, who had cared for me when no one else did. The man I had grown to love. Blake had hurt him. The rage that burned inside me was unlike anything I had ever felt. Blake thought he had won. He thought he could break me, but he had no idea who he was dealing with. I stormed into the operating room, my hands trembling as I grabbed the scalpel. I couldn't lose Ryan. Not like this. I worked faster than I ever had, my hands moving with precision, every cut, every stitch, a declaration that I wasn't going to let Blake win. Not now, not ever. Hours later, when I emerged from the operating room, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and triumph. Ryan was alive. He had pulled through. Blake, on the other hand, had no idea what was coming. As the days passed, I grew stronger, more determined to take control of my life. Blake's influence was fading, his power waning as more people saw him for the fraud he was. His obsession with me only made him more desperate, and soon, it became clear he had no one left to turn to. Cindy had abandoned him, and the people who once supported him had begun to distance themselves. Blake had fallen, and I was standing tall. Ryan and I grew closer, our bond deepening with each passing day. I had fought for my happiness, my future, and now I had it. Together, we built a life free from the shadows of Blake and Cindy. In the end, Blake's desperation led him to make a fatal mistake. He tried to reach out to me one last time, but it was too late. I had moved on, and when he saw the life I had built without him, it was as if the last remnants of his sanity shattered. Blake disappeared from my life for good, and I never looked back. I stood on the edge of the future, my heart full of hope and my eyes fixed on the horizon. The past had tried to define me, but it no longer had that power. I had chosen my path, and I was going to walk it with strength, dignity, and love. As I looked at Ryan, I knew this was just the beginning. Together, we would build a life that was ours and ours alone. Blake and Cindy, the two people who had tried to tear me apart, would remain nothing more than distant memories, their fates sealed by their own actions. And as I took Ryan's hand, I realized I had finally won.